Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. For the video this week, I was kind of intending to return to the homemade MREs, but then I realized there's only 1 week left in National Beef Month. And I recently received another shipment of Keystone canned meats, and I wanted to be sure that before the end of National Beef Month, I had one more chance at throwing out a Prepper's Pantry recipe where I'm using nothing but shelf-stable items and off-grid cooking methods. Now in the recent weeks, you guys have become very familiar with these Keystone canned meats and how impressed I have been with the overall quality. And if you'll stick around through this video, I'm going to tell you how you can enter 2 different contests to win free Keystone meats. Now if you're here for the last video, you know how it works. If not, stick around for a bit and I'll tell you about it. For this video, I'm going to do a variation on something I did in a camping video a couple of years ago. I'm going to make my version of Sloppy Joes. And for that, we need the Keystone ground beef. Now, the reason we do these videos is to simulate what would happen if you were in a blackout or a disaster and you had to come up with recipes to feed a picky family or just people that are tired of eating the same old survival foods. I say it over and over again, good food is good morale. In order to keep your family as comfortable and as happy as possible during hard times, cooking good food could be that one thing that makes the difference. So I love this idea of being able to cook with things that you would have in your prepper's pantry of just shelf-stable items so that in the event that, say, your refrigerator went out 3 or 4 days ago and everything in it's gone bad, you can still cook good food. So let's dive into this and see how are we going to do Sloppy Joes with nothing but shelf-stable items and off-grid cooking. Now, one of the things that Sloppy Joes require is bread. Now, yes, bread is relatively shelf stable for a certain period, but what happens when those loaves of bread and hamburger buns and stuff that you had sitting around in the pantry all got eaten up in the first few days? And now you're going to need some kind of a bread base to put your Sloppy Joes on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make some biscuits to go under our Sloppy Joes. So let's look at everything we're going to need to make not only the Sloppy Joes, but the biscuits for this meal. All right, first off, of course, we're going to need some biscuit mix, something that's got all of the ingredients in it to make biscuits without having to dig out a bunch of other stuff. The great thing about all-purpose baking mixes like this is it has everything already in it. You don't have to add any baking soda or anything else in here to get that fluffy rise from your biscuits. Now, typically these mixes call for milk, but of course, in a disaster, that might be hard to find. We could use canned evaporated milk, but I found something the other day, and you guys seem to be liking these products, so I'm going to show you something else that I just picked up. I got some Hoosier Hill Farm Buttermilk Powder. And then all we're gonna need to go with that is some water. All right, let's get this stuff out of here and show what we're gonna need for the Sloppy Joes. Of course, the headline act in this recipe is our Keystone ground beef. To go with that, we're gonna need a can of crushed tomatoes. The other day, I made up a tri-pepper blend where I took orange, red, and yellow bell peppers, I chopped them up and put them in the freeze dryer. Now, you don't have to have a freeze dryer to do this. You can do this same mixture with just a standard dehydrator, or you can order a mix already made off of Amazon. I just chose to do it myself because I've got the ability to do it now, and I wanted to show off. We're gonna need some minced onion, a little bit of brown sugar, a tad bit of ketchup. For our spices, we're gonna need garlic, chili powder, mustard, black pepper, and salt. And then for our final ingredient, most Sloppy Joe recipes call for barbecue sauce. I happen to have a few packs of Arby's sauce that were just sitting around in my condiment drawer. We're gonna make use of those. All right, so that's everything we need to make our Sloppy Joe mix. Let's get busy getting our biscuits whipped up because we're gonna have to cook those and have those waiting when the rest of this gets done. All right, so we've got our biscuit mix and our buttermilk powder. Let's make biscuits. Now, as with most of my cooking, I don't really go by a recipe, and a lot of times I don't even do exact measurements. Now, if I were baking a pie or something like that, it'd be a different story, but for the purposes of just making biscuits, these are just made with love. Measure with your heart. Now, we're not making a huge batch because the cooking method we're using is relatively small. We're gonna make enough to feed a family, but not an army. Just throw in just a pinch of salt. Now, baking mix does come with salt already in it, but when you're making biscuits, you need a little bit more flavor. Let's add in some of our buttermilk powder. Now, you don't have to use this. Like I said, you can use evaporated milk, or if you've got regular milk, you can use it. You can even do just water, but water's not gonna bind as much as milk does. So your biscuits may not come out perfectly if you do just plain water. Now, if you really want to kick these up, you can add some Hoosier Hill cheese powder or something like that to give it a little bit of a cheesy base. But I want to just try this with just this buttermilk powder. Let's see what we end up with. Let's get our water in there. Just a little bit at a time. I don't think we're going to need any more water. This is looking just about right. Yeah, I think that's going to be perfect. Now, I brought this very well seasoned baking dish so that we can roll out our biscuits on that. Put just a little bit of our biscuit mix on here. Now, my wife wouldn't take this step. She prefers just to do drop biscuits, but I kind of want to see what happens when we try to cut these out and make them a little more perfect. Let's roll our biscuit dough out. Flour the hand just a little bit. See if we can flatten this out a little. I don't want them too flat. I want these to be nice and fluffy. I made this little tray here by using an air fryer pan and covering it with aluminum foil because it's just about the right size for our cook system. Let's cut out some biscuits here. I think we can make one more. How pretty is that? All right, let's get these out of the way, set up our cook system. Of course, we've got my little butane stove that my brother gave me for free as our base. And then something that made a lot of people happy when I featured this in a video, my Coleman camp oven. All right, let's get these things in here and let them start cooking. Now this is indeed going to be an experiment. I've never cooked something like biscuits in one of these ovens before, and I know that they can be a little bit finicky. So I'm really curious about how these are going to turn out. But look, this is the hand we've been dealt. This is how we have to cook today. Let's see if we can make it work. Now, just like I said last time I used this one, you don't walk away from this oven. Not until you get everything dialed in, because it's going to continue to get hotter and hotter and hotter. So once it hits our cooking temperature, we're going to have to dial that gas back. Let's check on our biscuits. Oh yeah, those are doing just fine. Now you don't want to open this thing any more than you have to, of course, because it's not very efficient. Every time you open it, you're going to lose heat. Folks, have I got a thing of beauty to show you. Check it out. I feel like this needs a theme song, but we'll just open the door. Look how beautiful those biscuits turned out. Perfectly cooked, top and bottom. All right, let's get these out of the way and let's start cooking some sloppy joes. So now it's time to actually get to cooking the sloppy part of our sloppy joes. And so now is as good a time as any to tell you about the two giveaways that Keystone's got going on. One is through their website, they have a national contest where you can win a year's supply of Keystone meats. There'll be a link in the description box below where you can go sign up for that contest. And best of luck to you guys. I would love to find out that a viewer in my audience won this contest. So please go enter. The other contest is strictly for my audience. If you're enjoying these videos and you would like to win a sample box of these Keystone canned meats, it'll come with ground beef, natural beef, turkey, chicken, and pork, all in these giant size cans, and it'll be shipped direct to you at your house. You don't have to pay for shipping, you don't have to pay for nothing. All you got to do is enter the contest, and in order to do that, you just need to comment down below, go to the comment section, and leave a comment that says, bring the beef. On the 31st of May, I'm going to point a randomizer at all of the comments in this video and in last week's video, and pick a winner for that giveaway. So if you're interested in that, be sure to leave a comment. Let's show some love to the folks at Keystone Beef, and then they're going to show use some love. All right, so let's get the ingredients in our skillet to make our sloppy joes. Oh yeah, by the way, if you like this video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, be made aware of all upcoming videos, all that kind of stuff. And as usual, just like Keystone Beef is feeding us, feed the algorithm. Leave a comment, tell us about it. That way YouTube knows you know the routine. Let's go cook something. Now, as I keep finding out as I'm doing these videos, there's a lot of fans out there for these Keystone meats, and rightfully so. This stuff is all natural. It's made with nothing but beef and salt. No extra additives, no sugars, no nothing that's thrown in there to create flavor. And then you got to worry that whatever recipe you're trying to do is going to conflict with whatever seasoning they've already put in it, because all this is salt. I have been highly impressed with these products so far, and I've heard from a lot of my audience that you guys love this stuff too. Now, as usual, we're going to start by putting all of the broth, all of the fat, everything in here so we can get all the flavor that is intended to be in here. We're going to use that broth to help kind of break everything up. Plus, we're going to use it to help reconstitute some of our vegetables. Because while we're heating this up to temperature, I'm going to start adding in all of our seasoning and all of our veggies. We're going to add in some of our minced onions, our tri-pepper blend. Remember, these are freeze-dried yellow, red, and orange bell peppers. And this is going to add a real depth to the flavor of this dish. Let's add in our garlic. Lots and lots of garlic. So we've got some coarse ground black pepper, chili powder, and our ground mustard. Now you can use yellow mustard as opposed to ground mustard if that's all you've got to work with. I'm not going to add salt just yet because, as stated earlier, the only ingredient that goes in the can with the beef is salt. So it's typically sufficiently salted for basic recipes, but if you really want to kick up the flavor, you might find yourself needing to add a little bit more. Let's add in our crushed tomatoes, a little bit of brown sugar, some ketchup, and then let's round it out with our Arby's sauce. You can use any barbecue sauce you like for this step. Now this is a super quick recipe. You don't have to cook it for a long time, but since we're using our freeze-dried vegetables in here, we want to make sure they get plenty of time to reconstitute. So I'm leaving all that broth in there so that they can help with that, and it'll keep from cooking everything out before those vegetables are ready. Let's turn our temperature down a little bit. I think we've gotten to the temperature we need to be at. And let's let that just sit there and simmer for a little while. Now the tri-pepper blend that I use in this recipe are uncooked peppers when they went into the freeze dryer. Unlike a lot of dehydrators that will cook things at low temperature, the freeze dryer does not cook the food. So once it's done with the process, it still has to not only reconstitute, but cook to whatever consistency you like. I like my vegetables translucent when I'm cooking, so I'm going to need to let these simmer in these juices for just a little while so that everything gets to be exactly the way I want it. So we're just going to let this sit and simmer for a little while and then see what we ended up with. All right, it's time to give this stuff a taste and see where we are as far as our seasonings are concerned. There's still just a little bit of cooking that it needs to do, so now is probably a good time to get in any additional salt or anything like that we need to add. This smells absolutely delightful. Wow. It's also screaming hot, so let's cool that down a bit. All right, let's give that a try. Y'all, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but beep beep. That doesn't need a dadgum thing. In fact, I'm going to turn this heat off and I'm just going to let it sit there for a little bit, cool down, and let those vegetables continue to rehydrate. But that stuff right there is the bomb. And in just a few minutes, we're going to put a biscuit under some of that and we're going to do it up right. All right, let's get this properly plated up. Let's cut open our biscuit. Look how perfectly done that biscuit is inside. Yes, it's not a great big giant super fluffy biscuit, but don't hold that against me. Let's get us a big old scoop of our sloppy Joe mix. We're going to do this open face style. Look at how beautiful this is. You've got the richness of the sauce. You got the color from the tri-pepper blend. And then there's that ground beef. That looks amazing. I wish there was a way that you guys could smell this stuff. I mean, my mouth is just watering from smelling this. It's so amazing. But let's get a bite with our Sloppy Joe mix and our biscuit. And let's see if this was worth the effort. Let's get a little bit of everything in there. Look at that. Look how amazing that turned out. That's canned meat, people. I'm telling you, you could put this in front of anybody. They're not going to question if you used canned meat. If they didn't know, they're not going to guess. All right, going in. If there was ever a mic drop moment, this is it. But I am not dropping this plate or my spork. That was a gift from a viewer. I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is get another bite. That's a treat. If you and your family were dealt a hard blow and you were in a disaster of some kind and you were having to resort to cooking for your family with nothing but stuff that you pulled out of your prepper's pantry, you could definitely do worse. Now, if you've got picky eaters that don't like peppers and things like that, you don't have to use it. To be fair, you could totally just pour some manwich sauce over that meat and most people would be perfectly content with it. I'm a little spoiled. I like a little something extra in mine. So this is how I roll. I'm so far beyond happy with the way that turned out. And I get a lot of comments from you guys saying you're going to try the recipes that you're seeing on this channel. I would love to hear if you've done that. If you've tried to duplicate any of the recipes that I've done in these Prepper's Pantry meal recipe videos, please comment and tell me about it. I'd love to hear how it turned out and what your family thought about it. I also want you to understand that I don't expect anybody to go out and duplicate these recipes exactly. If this looks like your cup of tea, go for it. If there are things in there you feel like you'd change, that's up to you. That food is going in your face hole. This is the way I like mine to be, but look, you don't have to do it that way. It's not gonna hurt my feelings if you change something in the recipe that I did. All I'm doing here is, one, I'm showing you that these Keystone canned meats are a great staple to keep around. Two, there's some really cool ingredients that I've found along the way to keep in my prepper's pantry, like those Hoosier Hill Farm powders. And the other is, it's just a message of hope. If you're going through a sudden disaster with your family, things don't have to be miserable. You can find ways to normalize and to get through these short-term disasters. I hope you guys have enjoyed this series, and I would love to hear from you suggestions of what you think I should do with some of these other Keystone canned meat products. You guys throw out the best ideas. Now, in the coming days, I'm going to be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'm going to an event with my family. I'm going to be shooting some video. I'm also going to be hitting up several grocery stores that I don't have around here. I'm definitely returning to H-E-B, but I'm also going to be hitting up a couple of other stores in the area, and please drop comments and tell me where I need to go while I'm there. And when we come back next week, I should be going back to the homemade MREs for a little bit and exploring the ones that I build in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But that's going to be a wrap for this one. And until the next one, prepare for the world you live in, not the one you wish existed. We'll see you around.